Today, we're diving into the work of a true visionary, Audre Lorde. We're going to explore how she taught the world a really fundamental truth, that embracing every single part of who you are isn't a burden. It's actually your greatest source of strength. Okay, so let's get right to the heart of what Lorde was all about. And it starts with a question she pretty much forces us all to ask ourselves. I mean, have you ever felt that? That pressure to simplify yourself for other people? To just pick one label that's supposed to define everything you are? It's a feeling I think we can all relate to.
But Audre Lorde? She just didn't believe in shrinking herself to fit into those neat, simple categories. Instead, she threw down this powerful challenge to the world itself. Stop making the boxes in the first place.
And this quote just brilliantly sums up her core message. She completely reframed the conversation. You know all those parts of you that society might see as complicated or contradictory? That's not a weakness. That is the very source of your power. So, who was the woman behind this revolutionary idea? Let's get to know the woman who called herself a warrior poet. She was born in New York City to Caribbean immigrants, and, Audre Lorde found her voice really early on through poetry. For her, it wasn't just about art, it was a tool for naming and understanding her own complex experiences with race, gender, and sexuality. Lorde described herself with this powerful string of identifiers: Black, lesbian, mother, warrior, poet. Now, for her, these were not separate boxes to check. No way. They were all interconnected, each one informing all the others. She just flat out refused the idea that any part of her had to be hidden or prioritized. They all mattered all at once.
This belief in a whole, complete self? Well, that was the foundation of her entire philosophy, and it challenged the very movements that she was a part of. Long before intersectionality became a common term, Audre Lorde was living it. She totally understood that different forms of oppression don't just happen in isolation. They are deeply, fundamentally linked.
And this powerful statement just sums it up perfectly. For Lorde, liberation could never be a partial thing. You can't fight for freedom for one group while ignoring the oppression of another. Real freedom, true freedom, had to be for everyone. And she really put this into action. She wasn't afraid to hold movements accountable. I'm talking about calling out feminist groups that ignored the experiences of women of color and LGBTQ+ spaces that just failed to confront their own racism. She insisted that empowerment, just like oppression, had to be intersectional. So, how can we actually apply these ideas in our own lives? Well, let's break down some of the myths that Lorde's work just completely dismantles. First up, this myth that you have to choose just one identity. Lorde's reality is that all our identities coexist, and our real strength, it doesn't come from cutting ourselves into pieces, but from honoring every single one of them. And what about this myth that movements for justice have to have these closed doors? Lorde's vision wasn't about creating some exclusive club. It was about blowing the doors right off the hinges. Her work demanded radical empathy, real inclusion, especially for people who had been pushed to the margins time and time again. And this is a big one. She taught us that staying silent about who we are doesn't keep us safe. The real power, the real protection, comes from speaking our full truth without apology. Just naming who we are, that is an act of resistance. So this brings us to her legacy. I mean, decades after she wrote these powerful words, her influence feels stronger than ever. Her voice echoes everywhere, from university classrooms where her essays are still studied, to protests where her ideas are fueling calls for justice. And maybe most importantly, in those quiet, personal journeys of people just learning to embrace all of who they are. So what's the ultimate takeaway here? In a world that so often profits from our self-doubt, Lorde reminds us that this simple act of self-love isn't selfish at all. It's revolutionary. And we'll end with this thought. Audre Lorde's message is, at its core, a call to action. Your identity in all its incredible complexity and beauty is not an obstacle. It's the ground you stand on. It's the source of your unique power. The question she leaves us with is, are you standing in yours?